The first thing I registered was the weight, a familiar solid pressure on the edge of the mattress near my feet. Then the sound, not the frantic panting that usually meant he needed to go out, or the soft whimper of a dream chase. This was different, a low, steady whine, threaded with an urgency that cut through the thick velvet of my sleep. I cracked open an eye, the digital clock on my nightstand burning a blurry red 3:17 a.m. into the darkness. "Buddy?" I mumbled, my voice thick with sleep. "What is it, boy?" Buddy, my 7-year-old golden retriever, didn't try to lick my face or wag his tail. He just stood there, a darker shadow in the dark room, his whine persisting. He nudged my hand with his wet nose, a deliberate, insistent push. Okay, I groaned, swinging my legs out from under the warm comforter. The hardwood floor was cold under my bare feet. "You need to go out?" "Fine." I shuffled out of my bedroom and into the hallway, Buddy padding silently beside me. He didn't bolt for the back door like he normally would. Instead, he stayed close, his shoulder brushing against my leg, a living, breathing anchor in the silent house. The house felt different at this hour. Not just quiet, but hollow. The familiar contours of the hallway and the living room furniture seeming somehow less substantial. As if the world was holding its breath, I unlocked the deadbolt on the back door and pulled it open, expecting Buddy to rush out into the cool night air. He didn't. He stopped at the threshold, his body blocking the doorway. He looked out into the backyard, then up at me, and let out that same troubled whine. "What's out there, huh?" I whispered, peering into the darkness. The moon was a thin sliver, offering little light. The oak tree was a sprawling inkblot against the sky, and the fence line was just a suggestion. I saw nothing. No raccoons, no rustling leaves, just the still, deep quiet of a suburban night. But Buddy saw something, or felt something. His ears were pinned back, his whole body tense. He took a single step forward, then looked back at me as if to say, "You need to see this." A chill that had nothing to do with the night air traced a path down my spine. This wasn't about a full bladder or a stray cat. This was something else. I stepped out onto the dew-slicked grass beside him. The air was still. Crickets chirped their rhythmic chorus, but even they sounded distant. Muted dot, we stood there for a long minute, man and dog, staring into the nothing. And then Buddy did something he'd never done before. He leaned his full weight against my leg and let out a long, shuddering sigh. It was a sound of profound sadness. It was the sigh of an old man carrying a burden he could no longer bear alone, Dot, in that moment. Everything changed, Dot. It wasn't a dramatic, cinematic change. No lightning struck the oak tree. No ghostly apparition appeared. The change was internal, a seismic shift in the bedrock of my own reality. For the first time, I wasn't just looking at my dog. I was seeing into him. The simple, happy-go-lucky narrative I'd built around his life, the ball chasing, the treat begging, the unconditional but simple love shattered. What stood beside me was a creature of deep feeling, of a silent, complex inner world I had only ever paid lip service to. I knelt down in the damp grass, the cold seeping through my pajama pants. I kept his handsome face in my hands. In the faint light, his brown eyes weren't just warm and friendly. They were ancient, deep pools of a quiet knowing. "What is it, Buddy?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What are you trying to tell me?" He responded by licking my chin, a single, gentle swipe that felt less like a dog kiss and more like an absolution. Then he turned and walked calmly back into the house, his job, for now, complete. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat on the living room couch, Buddy curled up beside me, his head heavy on my lap. I stroked his soft, golden fur and replayed our 7 years together in my mind. I remembered picking him out from the litter, a clumsy, fluffy pup who had tripped over his own paws to get to me. I named him Buddy because that's what I wanted him to be, My buddy, a companion for hikes, a loyal friend for movie nights, a living security system for my first house. I trained him, fed him, loved him in the way I knew how. But had I ever truly listened to him? I thought about all the times he'd brought me his leash when I was stressed about work, how he'd rest his head on my knee during a lonely evening. I'd always chalked it up to clever conditioning or simple canine empathy. Now it felt different. It felt intentional. It felt like communication dot as the first hints of dawn painted the sky a soft periwinkle. A profound sense of guilt washed over me. I had been the center of Buddy's universe, but I had only ever let him orbit the outskirts of mine. I'd loved the idea of him more than I respected the reality of him a conscious, emotional being with his own thoughts and a silent language I'd been too busy to learn. When the sun was fully up, casting long, golden beams across the floor, I made a decision. I called in sick to work. Everything okay, Mark? My boss, Brenda, asked, her voice laced with mild suspicion. I was never sick. Yeah, Brenda, just something I need to take care of, I said, my eyes fixed on Buddy, who was watching me from his bed. Something important. That day was the beginning of my re-education. We didn't go for our usual brisk walk around the block. Instead, I put his leash in my pocket and we just walked. I let him choose the direction. He stopped to sniff a fire hydrant for a full 5 minutes and I didn't pull him away. I just stood there and watched him, wondering what story the scents told him. Was it the history of the neighborhood dogs? A map of their comings and goings? A canine newspaper I was utterly illiterate to? He led me to the park, but instead of heading for the open field where we usually played fetch, he veered towards a quiet grove of trees. He found a sunny patch of grass, circled twice, and lay down with a contented grunt, looking up at me. The message was clear. Sit. Stayed out, so I sat. I didn't check my phone. I didn't plan my day. I just sat beside my dog and watched the world. I watched the squirrels chase each other, the clouds drift, the leaves tremble in the breeze. It was a level of stillness I hadn't experienced since I was a child. Buddy rested his head on my leg, his body relaxed and warm, and in that quiet hour, I felt a peace I hadn't realized I was missing. He wasn't just a pet. He was a guide. This new awareness began to seep into every corner of my life. I started noticing the subtle cues I'd always ignored. The slight tilt of his head when I spoke certain words. The way his tail gave a single soft thump when I was genuinely happy, not just pretending to be. The different kinds of barks, one for the mailman, another for a friend, a specific sharp one when he was anxious. I bought books on dog behavior. I learned about calming signals, about the way dogs communicate stress and contentment through their body language. I felt like a fool for not knowing this sooner. I'd been so focused on teaching him to understand my world, sit, stay, come, that I'd never tried to understand his dot. The change wasn't just in my relationship with Buddy, it was in my relationship with everything. I became more patient, more observant. At work, I found myself listening more intently in meetings, hearing not just the words my colleagues were saying, but the inflections, the hesitations, the unspoken concerns. I became less reactive, more present. My friend Jake even commented on it a few weeks later over beers. You're different, man, he said, swirling his bottle. You used to be so wound up, always checking your watch, thinking 3 steps ahead. Now you just are. Did you take up yoga or something? I laughed. Or something I've been learning from my dog. Jake raised an eyebrow. To fetch? To drool on command? To be here, I said, and though it sounded simple, I knew it was the most profound truth I'd spoken in years. The most profound test of this new understanding came about 2 months after that fateful night. Buddy's energy had been lower than usual, and a deep, unsettling feeling had taken root in my gut. I took him to the vet, Dr. Evans, a kind woman with gentle hands. She examined him, her expression growing increasingly serious. "His joints are a little stiff, Mark," she said, "and he's lost a bit of weight. At his age, it could be a number of things. Let's run some blood work." The wait for the results was agony. That night, Buddy came to me again. Not at 3 a.m., but as I was reading in bed. He didn't whine this time. He simply laid his head on the mattress and looked at me, his eyes deep and soulful. He held my gaze for a long, long time. I put my book down and placed my hand on his head. "I know, Buddy," I whispered, my throat tight. "I'm scared too." The next day, Dr. Evans called. Her voice was calm but direct. "Mark, the results show elevated calcium levels. It's highly suggestive of lymphoma." The world tilted. Lymphoma, cancer. The word echoed in the silent house, ugly and final. "What? What's the prognosis?" I managed to ask, my hand gripping the countertop for support. "With chemotherapy, we can often get a good remission, sometimes a year or more. It's about quality of life," she explained. I hung up the phone and sank to the kitchen floor. Buddy immediately came over and lay down beside me, pressing his whole body against mine. He wasn't licking my tears away or trying to cheer me up. He was just there, sharing the weight, bearing witness. He had known. He had tried to tell me, and I had finally been listening enough to hear the silent alarm in his spirit that we started chemo. It was a tough regimen, but Buddy handled it with a grace that humbled me. There were bad days, days of nausea and fatigue where he woo.